In John chapter 15, Jesus says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit and that your fruit should remain." We're taking a few minutes today to celebrate God's calling on the life of Reverend George Plvan and to celebrate some of the fruits of his ministry, fruits that remain to this very day. When I was elected SELC district president and came on to the Council of Presidents, two of my freshman colleagues, Reverend Mike Gibson of the California, Nevada, Hawaii district and the Reverend Michael Newman of the Texas district, approached me and they boasted of their SELC connections. They both said, "Oh, we're Plvan vicars." About a year later, I was introduced to the Reverend Luke Schnacky at an event in St. Louis, and he also bragged about the fact that he was a Plvan vicar. And I came to realize what an elite status this was. And subsequently, I learned that there was a club, kind of a fraternity of all of these Plvan vicars that interact regularly, they talk with one another, and they keep up with the ministry and the life of George. And as I was talking with them, someone mentioned to me that they were going to have a big reunion at George's funeral. And it was at that moment I realized, nope, we're not going to wait till George's funeral. And so we began a discussion which was supposed to culminate in a reunion at this year's General Pastors Conference or Professional Church Workers Conference in Viera, Florida on this very day. Sadly, because of the COVID situation, we are all not able to gather together in person. And so we've collected a number of video greetings from some of George's vicars to give thanks for God's blessing on the mentorship ministry throughout George's years at Holy Trinity in Garfield. George Plvan was ordained on January 22nd, 1956 at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Cleveland, Ohio, now located in Parma, Ohio. And Pastor Plvan's decades-long ministry included a number of different opportunities to serve the Lord. He taught at Emmanuel Lutheran College and Seminary in Greensboro, North Carolina. He served as pastor of St. John the Baptist Lutheran Church in Emporia, Virginia from 1956 to 1970. And then finally as pastor of Holy Trinity Lutheran Church and School in Garfield, New Jersey from 1970 to 1994. While at Holy Trinity in Garfield, he supervised the internship or the vicarage of 17 men from the seminaries who were preparing for ministry in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. He also served as interim and vacancy pastor of churches around Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Virginia, and he served as the SELC district secretary for many, many years. We can't talk about the ministry of George Plvan without mentioning his life's partner, Vera. He and his beloved Vera were married on January 13th, 1976 at Zion Lutheran Church in Norridge, Illinois by the Reverend John Bias. And their marriage was blessed with 4 children, Faith, Joy, Daniel, and Grace. And then finally, the Plvans retired to Emporia, Virginia, from where George continues to serve the Lord, to worship him as a member of St. John the Baptist Lutheran Church, and ultimately to wait for that blessed reunion in heaven with his beloved Wonder Woman, Vera. Join me today in taking a few moments to reminisce about the ministry of George Plvan and the impact of this one pastor's faithful ministry throughout the years. It's sort of like a stone dropped in a pool of water where the ripples expand across the surface. Physicists call this the wave packet. And that wave packet contains the transfer of energy from the source through the adjacent molecules and waves across the surface of the water. The following videos that you're going to see this morning tell a little story about the wave packet of George Plvan's ministry throughout his vicars from Connecticut to California, from Texas to Cleveland, and all around the Synod. Hundreds, yea, thousands of lives and souls have been touched by his ministry. We give thanks to God for George, this good and faithful servant.
The vicarage program with Pastor George Plvan began in 1974 at Holy Trinity when you introduced me to the congregation at all three services, even having me read the Epistola in Slovak. This was a joyful year to begin to apply the academic and theological truths of 2 years of seminary preparation. Vicarage year brought an education by observation that could not be taught in a classroom. You and Vera and your family opened your hearts and your home with lasting memories. Following the vicarage year, I returned to the Springfield Seminary, where the halls were not ivy covered and nor were they often swept, and was dismayed to learn that Holy Trinity Garfield had not been assigned a vicar. I spoke with the powers that be and informed them of the privilege I had in learning and serving with Pastor Plvan, and that by not assigning Holy Trinity a vicar, a seminarian would be deprived of a wonderful opportunity to learn under the guidance of a dedicated and compassionate servant of God to prepare for the parish ministry. The subsequent year, Holy Trinity returned to the vicarage program with the assignment of Luke Schnacke, a mutual blessing for both Luke and Holy Trinity. Many other vicars followed in our train to be blessed to learn and to serve with our mentor. Over the years, I've used examples and illustrations in Bible classes and from the pulpit, which began with, "During my vicarage year," and "Pastor Plvan wisely taught that." I'm sure other brothers can confirm this. Imagine if our dear Pastor Plvan received a royalty for every time we referenced our vicarage experiences. We join together and extend our appreciation and our love to you, our pastor.
My dear bishop, pastor, friend, and mentor, Pastor Plvan, I don't know that I've ever been able to call you George. You just mean that much to me. And I want to thank you for the blessing that you have been in my life. The ways that you taught me, the ways that you poured into me, the way you modeled how ministry is done. You know, I'm often with Luke Schnacke and Mike Newman. They've become very dear friends over the years. And of course, Mike Newman's the district president along with me, with Mike in Texas. And every time we get together, we talk about GDP, George Daniel Plvan, and just who you are and what you mean to us, and how grateful we are for the way that you and Vera and your family welcomed all of us to be part of your family, but also of your church community. And you showed us how a family and a marriage and a church can function together. And what a joy it was to bring that forward into all these years now, 36 years for me, as we think about how God uses each of us in our unique contexts and settings. I think back to 1982 when Kathy and I arrived in Garfield, New Jersey, wet behind the ears, couple of kids in ministry, and you reached out and you treated us with respect and honor. I remember that first day that I sat in your office. I didn't quite know what to do with you. I'd heard good things about you, but I still wondered where the vowels went in your name until I learned how Slovaks really spell stuff. I remember you told me this. You said, "We're going to work hard when we work and we're going to play hard when we play. And I'm going to hold you accountable for your ministry and for the things that you need to learn." And I nodded my head. Then you reached into your drawer and you pulled out a shotgun shell and you slammed it down on the desk and you said, "I used to have 2 of these. Had to use one on one of the other vicars." And then you just stared at me, and I didn't know what to do in that moment until you started to laugh. Thanks for your laughter. Thanks for your love. I think about the times of sitting in your basement, drinking some local beer, watching the Yankees games. I just want you to know that's how much I care for you and love you, because I'd watch a Yankees game with you as a San Francisco Giants fan. But to know and remember all of those experiences like they were yesterday, they were that transformational for us. I remember a special moment in my personal life, but also in my ministry preparation, because I think in that moment you taught me more about pastoral ministry than I ever learned at the seminary. It was the day that my mom died suddenly. And you took Kathy and I to the Newark airport so that we could fly to the West Coast to be with my family. And you put your hands on my shoulder after you got the bags out of the car, and you looked me in the eye, and you had tears in your eyes. And you said, Michael, go home and be the son. Don't be the pastor. And you modeled for me in that moment what it means to have the right priorities. Always a child of God, always a proclaimer of the gospel, but a man committed to family, and that everything else follows. I thank you for that. I thank you for the way that you have blessed, I'll say, tens of thousands of people in the church over the years because of the way you mentored and taught those vicars who later became pastors. And some of them, even a district president, who now have the privilege of being a Pastor Plvan to dozens and dozens and dozens of other guys, to now pour my heart and my life into them, that they might know and understand how ministry works in a family, in a marriage, and in a congregation. I pray that God wonderfully blesses you in this 65th year of pastoral ministry. And I pray that you would greet your dear family for me. We rejoice in Vera's graduation to heaven, healed and restored, and one day a glorious reunion for all of you. And for Faith and Joy and Dan and Grace. Kind of felt like you made us one of your kids when you invited us into your lives. May God be with you, give you great joy as you continue to influence others with the hope of the gospel and for the challenge of ministry. I love you, my friend. Thank you for all you are and have done for me. Happy anniversary.
Hi there. My name is Chris Cahill, and I'm the pastor at Christ the King Lutheran Church in Lodi, Ohio. I've been here for 30 years, and before that for about 9 years in a couple of churches in Chicago. And before that, over 40 years ago, I was a vicar at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Garfield, New Jersey. Pastor Plvan was my supervisor. That was in 1978, 1979. I learned a lot from you, Pastor Plvan. You were my supervisor. You were the boss. You were the pastor. You taught me a lot about what it is to be a pastor. You taught me about parish administration. You taught us a lot about technology way back in the day when we used to roll things off of the Gestetner machines. And it was a good experience for us. You were very good about saying this is what you wanted, and very almost strict sometimes about what you expected of me as a vicar, and sometimes I didn't listen, and you'd have to say, what did I tell you about that, vicar? And I would say, yes, sir, that's what you said. But since then, I've realized that you were a great model for me. You were a great mentor for me. You not only were that and a good pastor for our family, a wonderful pastor for our family, but your family embraced our little family when we came also. When we showed up in New Jersey, it was me and my wife and our 2-year-old son, Nate. And by October, the beginning of October, our daughter, Katie, was born. And your family just took to us and embraced us with all kinds of love and wonderful compassion for us. Your kids taught our little son, Nate, 2 years old, that the names of the 3 wise men were Bert, Ernie, and Cookie Monster. And we always remember that, obviously. But we remember that your wife embraced us. My wife, our little daughter, babysat Nathan and Katie at times, and just became one of our kids, like a favorite auntie to them, if not a substitute grandma. So we do appreciate all the love. And throughout the years, we've been in touch here and there. I've called you on occasion for pastoral advice, but we've called you on occasion just as friends. And so I want to thank you after all these years. I want to thank you for everything that your life has been, for all the ministry that you've done to all the vicars, for all the contributions you've made to our district and synod, and for the ministry that you carried on in Emporia and in Garfield. But most of all, I want to say thank you for being the friend of this Cahill family, my friend. Not only that, but my mentor. I thank God and praise God that I vicared with you, and I thank and praise him for all the blessings you have been to our family all these years. Thank God and thank you.
Hi, I'm Pastor Brad Hines of Living Word Church of the Bay Area near NASA Space Center in Houston. Pastor George Plvan was my bishop from 1990 to 1991 at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. I truly am blessed to have served under him and learned so much from him. The bishop, as we called him, taught me so many things. Both Old Testament and New Testament understanding. For example, the Old Testament understanding of the fear of the Lord and the New Testament understanding of grace and mercy. The fear of the Lord is a statement of faith in the Old Testament that speaks of shock and awe, appreciation and trust. And I was in shock and awe when I first arrived at Garfield, New Jersey. I got to sleep over at George and Vera's home, and he woke me up with the phrase and term, Vicar, it's time to get up. Well, I didn't know who he was calling. That wasn't my name. Well, it was my name and my role for the rest of the year. Talk about a little shock and awe, and let's face it, a downright personal fear. But what I learned was this was a man of God who may be stern on the outside, but had a great heart for the Lord and the Lord's people. And as I grew in serving Holy Trinity, I grew in that understanding of grace and mercy. Grace is getting what you don't deserve, and mercy is not getting what you deserve. I saw that evident when he modeled for me and mentored me in home visits. First time he said, let's go out and make home visits, you're coming along, but don't you open up your mouth. Keep it silent. Okay, I will. And then he would talk to me between visits as we drove in the car about how to serve people, care for them, what to do, what not to do, and I learned so much. The next week I was ready to go out and keep my mouth shut, and he turned around and said, this time you're going to do all the talking and I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And he taught me so much about grace and mercy between those visits. And then the next week, he handed me the list and said, it's your turn. Go and serve people. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I pray that as we celebrate this great milestone in your ministry, that you realize you have effectively influenced the country and the world by taking us, rookie pastor wannabes, wet behind the ears, thinking we knew it all, and shaping us into men of God who have that heart for people like you do, and a desire to make a difference in this world that will last into the next. And so I want to thank you, and I know the churches that I have served definitely thank you.
Hi, George. I'm honored to be a small part of the celebration of your many years of ministry for the Lord and His church. I give thanks for the fantastic blessing that you've been to so many people. I vividly recall that great year of vicarage that you provided. You were a mentor, educator, supporter in so many ways. I was truly blessed by that year. And especially at the end of that year of vicarage, I give thanks that you performed the wedding ceremony for Nancy and me. That was a beautiful service, beautiful sermon. I give thanks to you for so many things. May the Lord bless you richly as you continue to benefit and bless many people. I give thanks for your many years of faithful service to the Lord and His church.
Well, Pastor Plvan, I cannot imagine having a better vicarage supervisor than you. Thank you for teaching us to love and honor God's word and God's children, even those you taught us to call God's special children. Thank you for the love you and Vera lavished on us and for welcoming us into your family. And thanks for your children. I count joy and grace among the greatest gifts God has ever blessed us with. All our love, Pastor. From Bill and Cindy, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi, George. I bring you greetings from Concordia Seminary. I get to call you George now. I remember when I thought it would be okay to actually call you George instead of Pastor Plvan. I think that was last year. Joy and I seriously have many fond memories of our time in Garfield with you and with Vera back in 1988, 1989. We had just been married, I think, a few weeks before we came out there to New Jersey for our vicarage year. While I was the vicar, Joy ended up being both the music director and a preschool teacher. And I think she actually felt prepared for one of those. I also remember on Sunday mornings for the Slovak service that we were the Alauski and Alauska show. I thought that was kind of fun. Well, we learned a lot from you. We learned a lot from Vera too, and we learned a lot from the people of Garfield. We want to thank you for that. I'm sure you remember Judge Toth. His two observations were perhaps some of the more memorable from the members of the congregation about me. First, he said to me, the best thing about you, Vicar, is your wife. The second best thing about you is you know when to quit. That sounds like Judge Toth, I know. I assume he meant my sermons, of course, by the way. As I say, we have many fond memories of you and our time in Garfield. You and Vera showed us wonderful hospitality that first night when we arrived. We knew we had good people who were going to take care of us, and we knew God had placed us in a very good place to learn how to be a pastor. So thank you for that. We loved going into New York, as you know, seeing the shows, attending concerts. It was all great. Well, except for that one time when my car got stolen in Hell's Kitchen. And of course, the choir ended up singing about that in our farewell time. I think they put it to New York, New York. It was recording the whole saga. But, those were just one of the many memories that we have of our time there. And, I just wanted to let you know, by the way, we have two adult sons now. One is a software developer in Wisconsin. The other is on his vicarage year in Olathe, Kansas. And when he comes back to seminary next summer after his vicarage, that's when he's planning on getting married. And I don't think we talked about that. He just thought that'd be a good time for he and his future wife to get married. All I can say is I hope his vicarage was as good as ours was. Now, I understand that Garfield has stopped the vicarage program. I think they stopped it the year after me. I'm not reading too much into that, I hope. But I did want to conclude by saying, thank you. Thanks for being my mentor. Thanks for being at times my critic and for challenging me. Thanks for being my teacher. And most importantly, thanks for being my friend. May God continue to bless you as you have been a blessing to the church, to me and to Joy, and also to all those other vicars. God's blessings to you. Thanks.
Hi, Pastor Plvan. We wish we could all be together with you in person in Florida, but the Lord is giving us another way to celebrate with you. And the good thing is you can either listen to us again or just turn us off. We are recording on your birthday, August 20th. Dear Pastor Plvan, this is your birthday. This is the day that Jesus sent you to the earth. And we rejoice. We've come to celebrate, 'cause we love you and we thank you for the blessings of your birth. You have meant so much to us, your entire family. You, Pastor Plvan, Mrs. Plvan, who stands in the presence of Jesus, Faith, Joy, Dan, and Grace, really displayed the faithfulness of God to us as you took us into your family and included us in everything when we were in New Jersey. And we can't thank you enough for that. We love you.
So, I could sing too. Jane sang For Your Birthday. I can still sing Czas radosti, weselosti. I can sing Narodil se Christus Pan. And I can even chant Pomoc nasza budiš v imenu Pania. But I'm not going to do that now. I just learned that Slovak from you and Vera and the good people at Holy Trinity. I don't know that anybody ever had a better vicarage year than I did. It was that wonderful. And you weren't the only reason. But you were the main reason, and I thank you for that. I still love to tell George Plvan stories that just enriched me. And, when I get together with Mike Newman and Mike Gibson, and we just love telling those stories because it's just part of the richness of how we were blessed. But you taught me, you showed me the value of doing things right, doing things well, loving the people, seeing through some of the facades of people, blessing them where we could, and that was a rich thing for me. But when we were still in Springfield, before we moved to New Jersey in the summer of 1976, the assignment service was May 7th. I remember that, and I had no idea where we were going, and then they said Holy Trinity, Garfield, New Jersey. And I got my paper from Professor Hauser, and in a whispering way, he said, "You better know some Slovak," because I told him I knew a little bit. And I said, "I think maybe I'm in trouble," because I didn't know much at all. But then I waited till Sunday afternoon to telephone you. We'd never met, we'd never talked. I don't even know if you knew that you had an assignment yet of a vicar, because it was that 1 year between Jack and me. And it was in a little living room in a dumpy apartment in Springfield, and Jane was there, and I got on the phone with you, and we were talking and chatting and with you, first time we'd ever talked. And I said toward the end of the conversation, I said, "By the way, I had a nice conversation with President Marcis, who was the SCLC president, and I didn't know your relationship at all. And I told you that President Marcis said wonderful things about you and about Holy Trinity and about how we'd have a great year. I said, I just want you to know that he spoke very highly of you. And then you said to me, well, if he hadn't, I'd have broken his arm. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be a fun year. That's going to be fun. And if we hadn't talked before, I said, this is going to be good. And it was. It was just wonderful. I'm wearing a Yankee shirt to honor you because you took me to Yankee Stadium. I don't know what other vicar got taken to a ball game like that. So the richness of who you are in our lives, and as Jane said, your whole family, you just took us in as one. Just a side note, we are sitting here in the International Recording Studio of Inspire Media. You remember in the hospital, April 28th, 1977, when we all gathered and I baptized Elizabeth, baby Elizabeth, and you looked at me and you said, okay, now the work begins. I remember that you said that to me. Well, you got daughters, we have daughters. Who would know that these years later we'd be sitting in the international offices of her husband's company, his firm, and they've been a blessing to us. It all comes beautifully together in the circle that God gives us of life and ministry and service together. So, dziękuję pięknie. Dobre rano, ako se máte, dobrý den, dobré popoludnie, do svidania. All those beautiful, beautiful things. Z Bohom, we would say. As always, God be with you. We thank God for you. Z Bohom.
Hi, I'm Michael Newman, President of the Texas District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and former vicar for Reverend George Plvan at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Garfield, New Jersey. It's just a joy, George, to thank you for the blessings and gifts you've given me and my wife Cindy. You and your precious Vera poured your love into our lives. And I just want to thank you by mentioning 4 of the things I learned from you. The first thing I learned from you is to work hard and play hard. We had a lot of fun, but you also taught us to give our very best for the sake of the Lord and His harvest field, to make sure our ministries were ones of excellence and also ones of great joy. And I thank you for that wonderful lesson that really has played itself out throughout my ministry, and even to this day you helped prepare me. I thank you for that. The second lesson I learned from you is to be present in relationships. You showed tremendous pastoral care, excelling at everything from visitation to memorial services and funerals, and loving your people during the best of times and the most challenging of times. Be present in relationships. Really, ministry is about people. And you showed the heart of Jesus Christ as you taught and modeled how to love people. The third thing I learned from you, and for which I give thanks, is that there's always tomorrow. I'll never forget the trustees meeting when there was a big issue on the agenda, and you saw and I saw, I think a lot of people saw, that passing that issue and motion would be best for the church, but for some reason the trustees couldn't come to agreement, and we left that meeting with no agreement, no resolution. And you looked at me and I thought, oh man, is he going to be really upset about this? You looked at me and said, smiled and said, there's always next time. You showed that our agendas or our plans, our preferences are not really what run the church, but this is the Church of Jesus Christ. And we walk with His people. We walk according to His time. And we can be patient and loving even when we don't get our way. and continue with the focus of our ministry, the gospel ministry. And that's the final thing I'll mention. Out of all the many, many things I learned from you, the final thing I'll mention is that we live by grace. We live by grace, that Jesus is our Savior, that He loves us and deals graciously with each one of us, from a little wet behind the ears vicar and his wife to every member of a congregation and the people in the community. We live by grace. We receive that gift and we proclaim that gift. That's the focus of our ministry, to make sure that we never forget this is about the gospel. This is about the Son of God who bled and died on the cross and rose up from the grave so that we can be given the gift of life, and in our baptisms walk in the newness of life. This is about giving people hope that transcends even death. This is about the best gift we could give to a broken world. We live by grace. I received that gift from you, both Cindy and I did, from you and your dear wife. Your congregation received it, all the people you have served, all the vicars, and now we have the privilege, and I have the privilege, of sharing that gift with many, many others. Thank you for the blessings. Thank you for who you are. We love you. We give praise to God for you. And I am so glad that we will walk in partnership in eternity. And maybe you'll still call me vicar in heaven, and I'll call you pastor. But it's a reason to give thanks. So God bless you, and thank you.